You're listening to the Straight to Video podcast with Rob Lane.
Hey, how's it going out there? Hope you're doing good and everything is great. Today's show here on the Straight to Video podcast was a nice, fun surprise. If you listen regularly, you might have heard my chat a few weeks ago with my old friend Rob Wild of Midnight City and author Christopher P. Hilton, who has a book out called The Spectacular Rise, Fall and Rebirth of Hair Metal. We basically chatted for an hour about our favourite bands, and whilst I wasn't sure how the episode would go down, a lot of you really enjoyed it. Well, in the Facebook comments when I was posting the episode, another mate of mine, Craig Hall, asked if I'd read the book Hellbent for Leather, which came out in 2004 from an author called Seb Hunter. I had read the book and was very familiar with Seb because that book was a big deal for me. Back when it was released in 2004, no one was really talking about or shining a light on the music I loved. I'm talking like the late 80s and early 90s hard rock, but this book was just full of it. Seb's book tells his tale of growing up in Winchester, being, I guess, seduced by hard rock and heavy metal music and wanting a piece of it all for himself. So it takes us on his journey from Winchester to London, chasing his rock and roll dreams with his various bands such as the Trash Can Junkies, and it's an absolute joy. If you've not read it, then please hunt it down as you will not regret it. So after a few Facebook comments and messages, I was able to set this chat up, and it really was a lot of fun to speak to Seb. We talk all about the writing and release of the book, his time growing up and chasing the elusive rock and roll dream, and also what he's been up to since, along with his thoughts on a potential sequel to Hellbent for Leather, which may well surprise you in the direction it could take. Now, before we dive in, I want to give my usual important shout-outs. Firstly, to the wonderful folk who have shown their support to the Straight to Video Patreon page. If you love the show, then Patreon allows you to get a little more involved behind the scenes by sending a small monthly donation of your choice to help support and cover costs for a show like this. And in return, you get early access to the show's guests, a bonus podcast, exclusive merchandise, and I've also just put some Straight to Video trucker caps in the online store and made a nice little discount code for Patreon supporters. Lots of cool things happening like that, so if you want to learn a little bit more, then please check out patreon.com/STVpod. Speaking of discounts, our friends at Dead Skull Coffee are offering listeners to this show 15% off their awesome ground or full bean coffee. Dead Skull Coffee are a UK-based, truly independent rock and roll business, so it's super cool to work alongside them and have their support for this show. To grab this cool discount, simply head on over to deadskullcoffee.co.uk, fill your basket and add the promo code STV on checkout. Alright, let's get into my chat with Seb Hunter. If you enjoyed this talk, please hunt down your own copy of Hellbent for Leather, which is still available online, and also check out Seb's band Provincials, who you can find on Facebook at We Are Provincials. I think you'll enjoy this talk, and I want to thank Seb for taking the time to chat because it really was a blast. So let's dive in to my Straight to Video talk with Seb Hunter.
The evening's come, the lights are dark, your mind has spun your face into the ground, and after all is said and done, there's nothing left but shavings of the sun.
When it feels like you're falling, turning to a dark. When it feels like you're falling, you'll survive. When it feels like you're falling, you're alive.
Hello, mate. How you doing?
I'm good. How's things? You alright?
Yeah, good, thank you. Yeah, all good. I've just finished. I'm a guitar teacher these days, so I've finished all my lessons.
What's the current trend with the guitar teaching? Is there particular songs that everybody wants to learn?
I'm quite careful to not let people decide. I encourage people to kind of suggest songs they want to do. You know, I've got certain things. I won't do Ed Sheeran, I won't do Queen, I won't do shredding. It's just old stuff. The thing is, if you do modern pop songs, people often want to, can we do this pop songs? But modern pop songs, if you deconstruct them, they really are just 2 or 3 chords repeated over and over. And then there's a whoa, whoa bit. There might be a rap bit. So if you're playing it on guitar, even a kid, it's just like, it's very quickly, very, very boring.
Yeah, it's all in the production, isn't it?
It really is. And they sound amazing. The productions are fantastic. It's like, wow, how can it be? If you break it down, it's a C, it's an A minor, and it's an F, that's all it is. So without the production, it's just nothing. And you realise that modern pop music, I suppose it's ever been thus, it's purely designed to have one hook, to have that hook get in you and to be there sort of forever, really. You know, the whole kind of like David Bowie, even in the 80s when pop songs, there was Stop Aching and Waterman, at least they were doing a bit more. Because if you play Never Gonna Give You Up on guitar, which I teach as well, you know, it's actually quite interesting. Actually, this is quite a good song, actually. If you break it down, you strip away all the bullshit.
It's a well-structured song. That's why it's lasted this long.
Exactly. And and the melody is quite interesting. And it's like, even in those days when we thought, oh, it can't get any worse than this, watching Top of the Pops, you know, waiting for fucking one rock vague thing to come on, it was always this shit. But actually, even then, the structures of the pop songs were actually okay. But now it just isn't. It is purely product. It is just, here's the hook. It's bleh. So yeah, I try and avoid that just because it's fundamentally unsatisfying for everybody.
Thank you for doing this. It was a nice surprise when it all kicked off in that little Facebook thread. I was like, wow, I'm up for that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't do this sort of thing. This is the first interview I've done for my writing stuff for years and years, at least 10 years. I'm a bit nervous, actually. I'm like, oh God, I haven't talked about this stuff for such a long time. I don't know how I feel. Where do I stand about it? You know, I don't know if I can consider myself a writer anymore. Do you know what I mean? So it brings up a lot of things in me.
It's over 15 years since your book Hellbent for Leather was released. I remember when it came out for me, it was so cool to read about that kind of music, particularly the glam rock which you and your bandmates were drawn into, as at that time, nobody was talking about that music. I think there'd been the book Fargo Rock City, and that was about it.
Fargo Rock City came out just as I was writing mine. And to be honest, had I known about the existence of Fargo Rock City, I wouldn't have carried on with mine because I didn't know about it. Because I was working in publishing at the time, not happy, and I wasn't doing anything creative. And I thought, I'll try and write a novel. And I wrote a novel and it was just awful. And I got these rejection letters that weren't just no thank you. They were just like, this is really bad. You should stop. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. Well, I sort of carried on. I was just doing it for it. So I enjoyed the process of it. And then just I had this idea. I was like, oh, I know. I could write a sort of memoir, a self-mocking thing of what happens to most people, right? Most people, you get all these vainglorious, hubristic rock memoirs, right? But I thought, well, actually, most people, it's humiliation and failure. And so I thought, well, I could do that. And I thought, because I've got the tone for it. I've got the self-deprecating English, humorous thing, you know what I mean? So I thought, and immediately, as soon as I started doing it, I thought, oh, this is working. And it was just fun, just brilliantly fun, because there was no pretense having to write a novel. You have to go into all these stylistic things. But it was just no style. It was just, I can just be funny and just talk about what happened to me. And it was weird. It just happened so quickly. There was a mate of mine who was there. I worked in sales. I wasn't an editor. And I was just in sales. So I wasn't kind of like plugged into any publishing network. But a mate of mine who was an editor said, I'm just going to have lunch with an agent. Do you want me to, because I talked to her that way. I forced my novel on the poor bastard. And he said, do you want me to take your heavy metal idea? And I was like, oh, would you mind? I had literally about 4 or 5 pages of just like a chapter breakdown. And the agent phoned back straight away and said, do you want to have lunch? I was like, oh God, And it all just happened so quickly and so out of the blue. He said, yeah, I want to be your agent. Great. I did a bit more, a couple of chapters, and then he did a kind of auction. So he sent these, I think it must have been 4 or 5 chapters, off to a bunch of different publishers, hoping to stimulate an auction. Most of the time it doesn't work, everyone just goes, fuck off. But we got some no's, but it failed. I'm my wife at the time, ex-wife now. We'd gone camping in the south of France just for a sort of long weekend. And it was so bizarre. You just get these calls saying such and such a publisher's offer this much money, this people offer this. And it was just so bizarre, especially when you're somewhere else. And in the end, it went to, I could tell you, £100,000 advance.
Man.
From Fourth Estate, which is kind of literary part of the sort of cool imprint for HarperCollins. And it was absolutely extraordinary. It just completely unbelievable, just out of nowhere. It was just the most incredible moment of my life. I was just like, I still can't believe it now, really. I'd never had any aspirations. It was just sort of, I just knew it was right and the tone was right. And as you say, there hadn't been...
Nothing.
At that time, there was quite a lot of this kind of post-Bill Bryson, John O'Farrell, these kind of humorous non-fiction, like that, who's that guy? Dave Gorman, Yes Man, Danny Wallace. Those sorts of books were kind of in vogue. They were taking a subject and that kind of subjective view, do you know what I mean? That was a kind of a genre, if you like. So I was aware, because I worked in the trade, that there hadn't been a metal one. So I was aware of the potential commercial for this. But I thought, someone else is going to have the idea.
Well, it's going to go either one way or the other. It's either going to crash and burn because nobody's interested because it's not been done, or it's going to do the other way.
Exactly. This was like 2002. This was just before the darkness even. So metal was in its, dark. The Reformations hadn't come. Classic rock was around, but it wasn't. The big Renaissance thing that came soon after wasn't there at all. And so I didn't know. And I found out, I can't remember what point, about Fargo Rock City. And I was just devastated. I was like, fuck, it's exactly the same as my book. I looked at the cover and it had the cow with Gene Simmons makeup. And I was like, this is just genius. It's clever. It's Fargo Rock City. It's a better pun than mine. I was just like, but I just had to persevere. And I read about it. And I mean, actually, it wasn't quite the same because it's more academic and but it was still a nightmare. Do you know what I mean? Just to realize, oh God, that's exactly what I'm doing. So, but I've never read it. I've always kind of been terrified of it. I've always felt like, I'm never going to read it just in case.
For me, it didn't have as much music in it as I expected it to have. I didn't get into it as much as I thought I would. Kind of not what I expected it to be. Whereas yours ticked all the boxes. I
haven't read it, so I still can't say. Well, I suppose mine was specifically about, ostensibly it's a sort of heavy metal memoir, but as you know, and it was much more tribal in these days. Everyone starts off metal, you get Iron Maiden, AC/DC, Judas Priest, and then where do you go? Because it suddenly went, we were at a time, right, in the mid-80s where you either went that way or you went that way, right? Thrash or glam or fucking thunder up the middle. Where'd you go? And of course, even now, I played in an improv band, kind of because I went avant-garde some years ago, and it all sorts, still completely music obsessed. And even then, I was in a band with two thrashers, and the glam thrash wars, they're still being fought. It was always a fucking glam twat. And it never goes.
But everybody knew what everybody was doing. With Kerrang, everything was covered.
Yeah.
So everyone knew all the different genres. And I think in your book, you even mentioned, even bands like Roxette got mentioned in Kerrang back in the day.
Yeah, anybody with any vague... If I had a guitar in it that sounded... then. But what was funny about what I thought you were saying then about Kerrang, because of course that was everything, and then until Raw came along, and then Metal Hammer, they all jumped ship, all that stuff. But it was that we all knew, even if you didn't like thrash metal, you just read about it. So I know loads. I'm sure you do as well. I know loads about Obituary and Exodus and all these bands. Never had a fucking note of it ever. Don't want to. It's because it's all. But I know loads about them. Death Angel. I know tons about them. Right, but I've never heard them.
I did one interview on this show, and a friend of mine said, I might be able to hook you up with some other people. And he sent me this list of people he knew, and Alex Skolnick was in there from Testament.
Yeah.
I don't know a single Testament song, but I was like, holy shit, you couldn't escape Alex Skolnick back in the day. I'm like, I want to speak to that guy.
Yeah. He's a really nice guy as well. He's a really, really nice guy.
Yeah, he was lovely. And I've seen so many different covers for your book over the years. I think I've brought copies for a couple of my friends, and it's been a different cover every time. How many times has it been reissued?
There's 5. It's never been reissued. There's the original English cover, which is the photo of me with the guitar, weirdly tinted pink, tinted purple. That's the original English one. Then there's this one, which is the English paperback. This is the best one. I'm holding it up. I've just realised this is audio only. Sorry. I am holding up my book with a charity shop sticker on the front. I always buy my books from charity shops. This is the sort of one, because this is the best one, because it's got the kind of Return of the Trash Can Junkies thing at the end.
Holy shit! Right, I didn't realise that.
Oh, you didn't know? Okay, this is, and it's got loads of extras at the end. For some reason, they would add extra content at the back. So you've got about the author. There's an interview. There's all sorts of stuff, and there's an extra chapter about, because the Trash Can Junkies, the band that I was in Winchester, we reformed to play the launch party of the book. The story of that is in this.
I'll be picking up.
I'll send you one. I got one in a charity shop. I can send you. And then there was the American hardback with some random blonde kid with a guitar and loads of squiggly lines, which is a horrible cover. And then there was the American paperback cover, which is a weird kind of torso, a kind of emo look. It looked like Jason Newsted, actually, with his fists stuck out like that, and it was really badly. And then it was translated to French. It's a French cover as well, which is just the back of someone's denim jacket. So I think there are 5 different covers, but it's never been reissued. Honestly, one of my best friends is Paul Erdpresser. He's the fucking... Am I okay to swear, by the way?
Yeah, go for it. He's
the fucking sales director of this company, right? Paul Erdpresser. He's one of genuinely my best friends. And I say to him, Paul, how about reissuing my book? You know what I mean? Because it's, it's still in print, and it's a bit, there's a bit of a cult following for it. If you reissued it, put a different cover in, I'm sure there'd be, he's like, oh yeah. But it's, but he never does. And I think it's because we're mates. If I was someone else, you go, yeah, maybe. But it's like that English thing, yeah, piss off. But it's never issued. I'm hoping it will be. It'll be the 20th anniversary at some point soon. So I'm hoping maybe to do something for something. I don't know. If anyone asks me to do it, I'll do anything. You know what I mean?
I think it's interesting to note, I don't think you use the term hair metal in your book.
That's a recent phenomenon.
Yeah, that shows how recent that term has been around.
What was it called before it was that? It was just called... it was called poodle rock for a while. People would refer to it as poodle rock.
Glam rock. Pop metal was around sometimes.
I guess so. Glam rock is, I would say, the correct term.
But everyone says, oh, is it 70s glam rock or is it?
Is it Mark Bolan? Yeah, exactly. So you have to quantify it, but it's, yeah. How do you feel about the hair metal term?
I have no problem with it because I know exactly what people are talking about and it seems to be sticking. So
yeah, you know what people mean, yeah. Yeah, no, fair enough.
You do use some great ones in the book, though. Prog glam, porn glam, junkie vampire glam.
Yeah.
And my favourite, guys, it's not working glam.
That was around the time of kind of post GNR, wasn't it? Where everybody, right, okay, just get rid of the pointy headstocks. It's like Les Paul's awful ambulance chasing, as we all know. And of course, when it gets to that, when an entire genre is just ambulance chasing, it's going to crash and burn at some point.
But yeah, junkie vampire glam for LA Guns. That was mint.
That was LA Guns, yeah. No. What was Circus of? I had quite a lot of insulting.
Beatles glam for Enough's Enough.
Enough stuff, yeah, that's true. Yeah. I like that.
Chart glam. That was a good one.
I can't remember any of these. It's been a long time since I looked at it.
Mint. I don't want to do like what I normally do in these chats, which is I trace people's early journeys, because that's what your book does. People should go and read the book. And I would like to touch on a few fun parts. You got into rock music like super early. Was it like 10 years old when you first heard AC/DC?
Yeah, I was at boarding school, having a miserable time at boarding school. And yeah, so I just in the form room, whatever, or someone put on, it was Let's Get It Up. I think the first single off For Those Who Actually Rock recently. Yeah. And it was that first time I'd ever heard rock music, and it just had that instant connection. So
that's just like burnt into your head.
Yeah, completely. And then there was AC/DC. And yeah, it was. It's all the cliches. You had to, it was years after that until I found out about Kerrang! Magazine. Until you find Kerrang!, you're just like, you go into a record shop and you're just looking for things that look like, because you've got no idea where to go. And AC/DC aren't exactly, AC/DC were weird. There's a kid dressed as a schoolboy and Bon Scott looking at all the little goblins, and it's just like, am I looking for other school children? What am I looking for? And of course, the sex, which of course, when you're older, the sexual connotations are so overwhelming with AC/DC, you have to filter out when you're young, because otherwise it's just super awkward. I had that thing at Christmas time, my mum bought me a tape and read all the names out saying, you don't know what this is all about. And I was like, I don't care. I don't listen to the lyrics.
And was this in Winchester?
Yeah, exactly, which is where I live again now. Grew up in Winchester, moved to London when I was 18 to become which is in the book, my doomed journey, and then sort of officially retired at 23. 23.
Most of us give each other 5 years, give it another 5, give it another 5.
No, I was burnt out. I didn't have the constitution for it. That was the thing. It was just, it's probably changed. In fact, it has changed nowadays, usually. In those days, you just had to, the excess was just ridiculous. You had to have constitution of an ox to get through it all. The drugs and I lived in a squat with Ginger Wildheart for a bit.
No way.
Yeah. Just after he moved out, actually. Those sort of squatty days in early 90s London. It was awful, just druggy and poor. I couldn't eat for a couple of days, and it's just...
We probably looked amazing.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you look at the photos. That was oh god.
Look at them cheekbones.
Yeah, exactly. Which is what it was all about, right? But it was dark days, and I just couldn't keep up. In the end, there was too much for a nice little boy from Winchester, and in the end, I kind of got a job in a bookshop. Worked in a bookshop on the King's Road for about 5 years, and then went into publishing, and I kind of got into left that to be a writer full time, because I was so lucky with what happened with my book.
I could totally relate to some of your descriptions of certain things. Things like one of the reasons you miss your first Donington, I think you said you wanted to go, but you was a little bit scared. I think that's kind of like a common thing, at least it was for me. That first concert's such a big deal. It's like, that's quite scary.
It was 84, it was Donington, it was 84, so it was AC/DC Van Halen, the classic 84 one, the legendary one. There was a whistle test piece on it. Do you remember Andy Kershaw just going around taking the piss out of all the bands interviewing all? But I was like 12, I think. I didn't know where Donington was. My mum and dad weren't going to take me. I didn't know anyone who was going. How am I supposed to get? So that was the thing. It didn't have any money, didn't have a paper round or anything. So it was all just. And if I'd been part of a big group of metalers and fans, we could all go up. But I didn't. It was such an isolated thing. Again, it's that thing. It was like you look for people who look like you look for records that look like you. Just had to forge your own path, which is why people end up having, what I love about the whole metal thing is people have disproportionate love for weird albums they find along the way, because you just find it and you listen to it, because you've bought it, so you might as well listen to it like 100 times. You've got no choice. And you end up just falling in love with it anyway.
You think everybody knows about this band. It's so huge to you. Well, surely everyone knows about this band, but no one's got a clue.
Yeah, but no, exactly. But that's what's so great about streaming now. It's kind of overwhelming. How do you possibly, it's like the whole history of music screaming at you.
Your first show, though, would be Ozzy at the Hammersmith Odeon in 1986, but you went there specifically to see Rat. Where had you heard about them? Was that a Kerrang thing?
Yeah, it was a Kerrang thing. I think it was Malcolm Doane reviewed, I'd never heard of them. He reviewed, it's funny how you remember these things. He reviewed Invasion of Your Privacy and he gave it 4Ks and there was a photo of them. And it was the two T's in the rat. That looked cool. They looked fantastic. You know, they looked brilliant. It was that kind of, post-show in the shower, mascara everywhere, scars. And I just thought, I have to hear them. I think I went out and bought that album or out of the cellar or something. And they were, of all those of the LA bands, they were still. In fact, I'm reading Piercy's autobiography at the moment.
He's great. That guy really knows his history. For someone who you'd think wouldn't be able to remember half of it, I'm sure there's a few years which he's got no recollection of whatsoever, but he's really passionate about the history of all the music, and he's doing an online TV show now, I think, tracing everything back. I've
heard he's doing a thing about the sort of Sunset Strip and all that whole, yeah. No, that's a good idea.
I love how you describe your frustration at that show as it gets nearer to showtime and everyone's milling around paying no attention. And you're like, why are these people not paying attention? Because Rat's on any second. It's going to start.
Well, you don't know, do you? You don't know. I was just incredibly lucky. My dad drove us all the way up, me and a couple of mates, in our school uniform. He picked us up from outside school in our school uniforms, drove us up there to Hammersmith Odeon. He went off to the pub and we went in, took our ties off. We went right to the front of the circle just as they were coming on. And because it was an Aussie crowd, right? Aussie crowd is old, cynical. They don't give a shit about some jumped up American support band. Everyone was in the way. It was literally just us, almost weeping with joy at the front of the circle. And Rat were playing to us. They were like, well, there's those kids up there. We might as well, And so we had them all to ourselves. It was wonderful. It was fantastic. And they all did a solo.
For a support band.
Even the bass player did a solo. And it was my first ever experience of that. I mean, now, because you expect it, right? Okay, well, drum solo in a minute. Right, let's go.
Not in a support slot.
And the bass player as well. They just stood there as well. They just stood there. They didn't kind of da-da. They just stood there with the fags, played the solo, 5 minutes, right, and then went off it. And I was like, but as one's first experience, it was just monumental.
Do you think it was as important as hearing that AC/DC song, or kind of on a par?
Yeah, because it was my first experience of something that unattainable American, incredibly glamorous thing. And I love the records, Out of the Cellar and Invasion of Privacy, and even the first to be. I just think they're just absolutely beautifully crafted. They're brilliant, brilliant, brilliant records. And it was just, I loved the music, and they were just cool. And there they were. And it was just, it was loud. It was Hammersmith Odeon. It was just unbelievable. The shame was, though, that our seats were right at the back, so we got ushered back. We didn't see a thing of Ozzy.
No. Did you buy a T-shirt that night?
No, I didn't have any money. No, I didn't have any money. I would have done. I'd love to have done. But no, we were just skim. Always skim.
Your book wonderfully gets into the headspace of a young teenager forming the first band, because you think you're invincible and going to take over the world. But then you flip it and hit it with total realism by saying, well, we're a bit shit when you first started, out of tune, out of time, because everyone is when you start off. I think that's the British self-deprecating thing.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I was just so excited. I was self-taught on the guitar. My dad, it's true, it'd be 3 chords and said, right, learn the rest yourself. So I learned it like so many people did, just by listening to records and playing along. And of course, after a couple of years, I was like, right, yeah, I'm ready now. It was just the universal experience. There was nothing specifically brilliant or interesting at all about anything I did. It was just, I think people relate to the universality of that striving, just complete delusion and love and just desperation, really. And I suppose I did that thing of living in a small town and thinking, I've outgrown this now, and moving to London. And I'm mortified now at the thought of, I literally moved to London with nothing at all, just a bag, a guitar. It's embarrassing, not even a case, a guitar on the train and a bag, going to be famous in London. It's tragic,
That takes some balls though, man.
It does, but I was just completely driven, That's all I cared about. I left school I left college. I was there for 1 term because I'd gone to an all-boys school. I'd never seen a girl ever, right? And I was at college, and there was a girl. I was like, I can't handle it. And I want to be a rock star, so I'm just going to leave. So I became a dinner lady at Winchester College and just spent all my money buying guitars, cheap, shitty guitars, And just at the first opportunity, I just thought I'll just go to London and see how it goes. And it's just awful. I just think of the way we used to be, and we used to treat people and girlfriends and sleeping in floors and just abusing hospitality and stealing food from fridges. It's just a squalid life. And just not getting in the right band. I just thought, if I get in the right band, but the band I joined, we were good. And we got to a certain point, but it just got druggy. And they ran this, have you heard this place called Hellfire Club in central London? It was a sort of glam place. It was a bit like, there were 2 Saturday night clubs in Soho in London. And all that whole scene used to go down there. 2 other guys in the band, they were DJs down there. And there were big guys on the scene. It was all about that club. It was all about drugs. It was all about that. what you're meant to do, right, is do the music and then get into the drugs and all that stuff. So, but we sort of like, it was all about the drugs. They were in a band as well. I just wasn't able to, so I bailed, luckily.
I think that was almost one of the attractions for that style of music as well, though, wasn't it? Because it was the lifestyle as well as the music.
Yeah, I suppose so.
So it was easy for people to buy into it.
Yeah, but and all the cliches, and it's all the cliches that, some people embrace that. It's funny because these days you look at what are the kind of contemporary, bands like the Struts, and it's a kind of, not career choice, but they're kind of these young bands that are kind of doing this whole, what do you want to call it, heaven, these young bands that are kind of doing this thing now. The debauchery isn't a part of it. They're learning to play their instruments, they're doing it properly. I look at this. I remember we went to a friend of mine, she got us like tickets to go see Bon Jovi at Hyde Park, freebie. So we went, got pissed and acted like complete twats. And there's this band who had record label interest, and they just stood there politely, all in a row. They looked just like Pretty Boy Floyd's, right? I can't remember what they were called, but they looked amazing. And they just stood there all night drinking water, watching Bon Jovi, and then they went home again. It was like, we were just saying, just have a beer, just shit yourself, take some ketamine, do something, just,
shit yourself.
Just anything at all. This is rock and roll. One of the reasons I can't really get into this new generation of bands is that it doesn't seem real. It just seems like they're looking at a certain aesthetic and they're thinking, I'm going to be that. And it wasn't that. People look at the magic of all those days was that these bands were really like that. It was stupid and it was delusional and it was a lot of casualties along the way, but it was real. And that's why Guns N' Roses, I think, even though I book, there's a whole chapter about them because they were the definitive everything. It's kind of unbelievable that they created that first record, considering the state they were in, the state, it was just incredible. It's like really lightning in a bottle stuff.
I appreciate Guns N' Roses and I like listening to them, but I've never considered myself a Guns N' Roses fan. But one of the things I've said is, if I could be a fly on the wall in any recording of any classic album, which would it be? And I think Appetite for Destruction would be up there, just to see how that went down. That'd be amazing.
Extraordinary how they did it, because it was so fully formed. I agree with you.
Like you mentioned, you moved into London during a time when the hard rock and glam rock movement was probably at its biggest. I mean, it never really totally crossed over into the mainstream like it did in the US.
No.
I would imagine London was a great place to immerse yourself into that scene.
It was really good, but it was never, but the whole kind of Warrant teaser, that whole kind of, you know what I mean? The winger, the slightly more fluffy.
The stuff I love, Seb, so be careful.
The fluffy side. Okay, I'm not going to insult it. I'm just using adjectives. I'm respectful, suddenly respected. The sort of fluffier stuff, it never really caught on in the UK. In London. London was much more Choir Boys, Dogs to War, Band Called Gunfire Dance, that whole grungy sort of thing was more the thing, a bit more of a streetwise version of it, I suppose. I don't know if it was different up north.
It was the same everywhere.
The most, Tiger Tails was a bit much. There was something fundamentally un-British about Tiger Tails, Wrathchild. It was all a little bit, hang on a sec, which, in America, you could do it, okay, because it's LA, Poison, fine. But there was something slightly un-British about it. Don't know why.
Yeah, I think people kind of relate to that whole street thing. A lot of my friends are always into like the LA Guns and Faster Pussycat.
Yeah.
And like Dogs D'Amour came along. And...
yeah, all that sort of stuff. Because I came out Hanoi Rocks. My big love of all this music, the band that are still completely, utterly in love with are Hanoi Rocks. Everything Hanoi Rocks. Yeah, they were my big switch on moment. That whole aesthetic, I think, kind of carried me through. So yeah, absolutely.
In your book, you take a really realistic look at when the hard rock went out of fashion, and you were genuinely excited by the whole Seattle and alternative movements of the 90s.
Yeah, I suppose because I was in the middle of it, in this London, slightly more streetwisey, Dogs D'Amour-y sort of thing, which wasn't quite so bouffant, should we say. So I didn't buy into the whole, I was read about it all, you could see it all coming, all the Tad and the Mudhoney, you could see it all coming, but you never knew that it was going to have such an impact. I think it was just Kurt Cobain. I really don't think it was the other stuff. I think there was something about, it was Nirvana. If you listen to Nevermind, it was a modern rock record, but Kurt Cobain was he was so fearless. He was just sarcastic. He was openly mocking, and it was GNR were at their absolute peak. The metal had got to the point where Guns N' Roses' Use Your Illusions came out at the same time. I queued outside Tower Records, only with enough money for one of them, you know what I mean? It was huge. And then there were these two towering things. There was Nirvana, and they were kind of, the MTV Awards, they'd have fights and they'd say snarky little things. And Cobain, I don't know, there was something to throw away about him. His old Cardis, and it was just like this ragged stuff, and it was just kind of punk rock. And what he did, it's just threw a shadow over this incredibly convoluted major label thing that all heavy metal had become.
Just pulled the curtain back all of a sudden.
It really did. And it just withered in the light. It was like a hard dose of reality. This is what rock should be. I think it was that. It was so radical. People say now, I got a lot of crap at the time, right? But you didn't even like metal. You just turned all indie. You like Kurt Cobain, because I was one of those who kind of felt it. I was inspired by him. It wasn't kind of giving up on metal. I was just like, this is brilliant. It was thrilling, what he used to do, and chuck his guitar and all this stuff. And it was rock and roll. It was punk rock. It wasn't selling out to think. I thought it was thrilling stuff. So I remember cutting my hair to a bob and wearing a cardi down the Hellfire Club, and everyone just thinking, what have you done? They were shaking their heads. What are you doing? What are you doing? And not wearing makeup. I still had my hair dyed black, but it was like, what are you doing? I was like, I know, it just collapsed, didn't it? It just collapsed so quickly.
Is there any video footage of your old bands, maybe like from the marquee or anything like that?
Do you know, there is, yeah. Funny enough, and I only came upon it like this year. A guy called Tony Pollard, whose stage name was Trash back in the day, he put something up on, it's only about 3 or 4 minutes long, but it's us playing the marquee. So yeah, and we sound exactly like a slightly shit version of Dogs to War. It's quite rock and roll, it's got a bit of attitude, it's quite good actually.
Was the place packed?
No, yes, no, it wasn't at all. But playing the marquee, it was brilliant. Just playing the marquee, we played the Underworld and all the places around London at that time. Musically, it was an exciting time. It's just it wasn't right for me.
One project you began working on during the past few years was the movie adaptation of the Kiss album, Music from the Elder. Is that still alive at all? Or
no, that's a sad thing. Really. I get kind of a real pang of sadness when I think about it, because it was just a project that I worked on full time. It's such a frenzy of excitement for about a year and a half, and put so much money and so much time and effort went into it. I wrote 5 drafts of the screenplay. It just sort of ran out of steam, because when you're writing a book, you've got a publishing house behind you, but essentially it's just you. When you're making an album, it's you. But a film, my God, it is just mega collaborative. And when you've got no money, it's really hard to get people to work. And I've never made a film before. So the things working for us were, it was a really good idea and people really bought into it. And there's a thing Guardian about it, and it became a kind of thing. And I was like, yes, brilliant, let's harness this energy. And and Owen, my best friend, he's a singer in my band in Winchester, he's in Hellbent for quite a lot. He's still my best friend. He's an actor, and he was the producer. And so the two of us did it together, and we worked out this concept, and we worked so hard on it. We did a trailer, we crowdfunded a trailer. So we had this branding, which was really good. We had a strapline, which was really good. It got to a point, the screenplay, which I was so proud of. This is really good. But there are a million screenplays, man. It was just really hard. It just sort of, I didn't know what to do, because I'd never made a film before. Having never made a film before, there were lots of things I did that were right, the right thing to do, and lots of things I did that were wrong. So I tried to kind of get in touch. I thought, well, okay, I'm going to do this in tandem with a proper production company, an indie or something. But it just, I had meetings with people in Soho and London, and meetings of this and that. And it's just, you enter a world of didn't know anything about. And I just thought, I'm just out of my depth here. I haven't got the money, and all these things take money and investment and this and that, and politics and playing. You need a producer. You just need someone who knows what the fuck they're doing. And Owen bailed. He couldn't commit to it anymore. So I just thought it just sort of withered. It just slowly, I've still got all the stuff. It's all, I'm hoping that if a magic button was pressed, it could all, reanimate. And, here it is. But I have no idea.
And I guess you always had that looming thing of you tied into like the big Kiss machine as well.
We were trying to kind of play that to our advantage. We were trying, because Kiss knew about this, but I think they were just waiting to see. During that time, every time my phone went, I thought it was someone from Gene Simmons that's going to try to shut us down, because we took a lot of liberties with, riding on their coattails, and what they're like, protecting their brand. Christ. But we tried to, everything we did, we'd send to their management and say, look, they'd like to get involved. Just want to say, we're not saying Kiss anywhere. We're just saying inspired by this. It's leading on. So we tried to be as kind of politically sensitive with that as we could, and try and get a bit of a toe from that while making a good standalone film. So it would appeal. So we theoretically had the Kiss audience there to kind of buy into it.
Yeah.
But also we were kind of making a kind of post-apocalyptic road movie thing that would stand up on its own terms.
Well, it took the form of a story based around a virus that wipes out
the
population. Was you like predicting some events?
Yeah, it's weird. I hadn't really thought about that. Yeah, it's true.
Your introduction to Kiss was through Animalize, right?
That was my first. It wasn't. It was Alive. It was the one that I bought. I was like, my God, another of those oh my God moments. But Animalize was my first. When you get into a band, right, and your first real-time album with that band, you know what I mean? You have their back catalogue, but it's like, what album have they got now? And it was Animalize. So which is not their best.
What attracted you to The Elder, though? Because that's like, to me, it sounds very of its time. It sounds like a late 70s, early 80s rock album.
I really like those unfashionable Kiss albums. I really like Unmasked. I really like Hot in the Shade, actually. I don't know. I think they're more interesting when they're doing different weird stuff. And I always liked The Elder. When I was a kid, I just liked the ambition of it. I like the Ace Frehley songs. Weirdly, Julian Cope, who was in Teardrop Explodes, I'm friends with his wife. And I was emailing her back and forth, and jokingly, we were talking about Kiss in these emails back and forth. And I said, as a joke, just to throw a moment, oh yeah, I'm finally going to make the Elder film, and sent off the email. She said, what a brilliant idea. And I was like, it actually is a brilliant idea. And it was just that. It was literally a sort of like an improvised little witticism. And it was one of those things, you speak to someone about it, they go, what a brilliant idea, fantastic. And it was a good idea. And there was going to be, we actually got into discussions with, there was a TV company, an independent TV production company called Mentor, and they were going to do a kind of fly on the wall, following me around while I make a twat of myself trying to make this film. But it didn't happen in the end. So, but I spent a year and a half working full time on this project, and we got so many great people involved, and I'm still really good. I made lots of, really great friendships I've still got to this day. Clive Tagg, who came on board, because I basically sort of put a thing out saying, can anyone wants to help, come and help. And people said, people volunteered their services from all over the globe. Some of them are fucking insane. Some of them have become really great friends. And Clive Tagg, he makes all our videos. The band I'm in now, the band I do now with my partner called Provincials, he makes all our videos. Yeah, so it was a wonderful experience, but I was out of my depth. And what I needed was a kind of magic little tooth fairy to come along and say, you need to do this, but it just didn't happen. And yeah, making films is really, really hard. That's the moral of the story.
I can't imagine. So what projects are you working on now? You've got the band The Provincials. How long's that been together?
Yeah, about 5-6 years. Yeah, that's myself, my partner Polly, and Steve, he's the thrash metal guy.
Wearing the Shades t-shirt in the new video.
Exactly. He plays piano and plays drums now as well, and we're a trio. It was kind of improvised dark folk stuff, but now it's kind of a bit more, there's drums and stuff. It's a bit more kind of rocky, I suppose. So we released a single last Friday. We've got a new album coming out, a third album coming out autumn, so that's good fun. So it's weird being back into doing music again, but good. I love it, and I'm teaching guitar, so I'm basically making a living through music. And I also do this. You're going to ask me about the other thing?
The thing I was going to ask you was, you teased at a sequel to Hellbent for Leather.
I am writing a sequel to Hellbent, yes. It's not leading off from where that finished. It's a strange story, another musical project that I've been involved in. About 5 years ago, I got a call from a woman saying, can you teach my boss one song on guitar? And I was like, this is weird. It must be some company CEO who wants to kind of shag his secretary, and it was all yellow. And so, okay, fine. So I show up at these like big gates on a village outside Winchester, and the gates sort of swing open. I drive into this big drive. It's so weird. I get out, I've got my guitar, and this bloke sort of comes out towards me, and I recognised him, but I didn't know who he was. But it was the TV chef, James Martin. He takes me into his kind of man cave. He's got a kind of pool table and all that sort of stuff. He says, you're probably wondering what you're doing. I said, yeah, because I realised he's got his cookery books over. I realised who he was. He's a TV chef. He says, I want to do a tour, like a cookery tour. At the end of the show, I want to come out with a guitar and do a song. And I want you to see. And I said, okay, I see, right, okay, fine. I said, well, have you ever played guitar before? No. Okay, right, when is this tour? It's in about 3 months' time. I say, okay, right, okay. I say, what's the song? So he plays a song, and it's a Coldplay song, but there's no guitar in it. Okay, so it's just piano. So it's just Chris Martin going, oh, and piano. And it goes on for about 3 or 4 minutes. Like, James, can I just stop you? This song hasn't got a guitar in it. So, I mean, we could do this song, but we could do the chords and you could do it, but it wouldn't sound like it. If you want to do this particularly, you want to get a piano teacher and do it on a piano like that. And he goes, oh, okay, well, the guitar's cooler, isn't it? So it's not really so much it's cooler, it's just that it's not a recognisable guitar song. I said, is there another song you might want to do? And so he plays Eric Clapton's Wonderful Tonight, and he plays it, and it starts. And then this little, the famous guitar line, down, 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 down. I said, well, okay, well, at least it's a guitar song, but it's got that famous little guitar lick in it. And he goes, well, you do that. I said, what do you mean I do that? He said, well, you play that bit. I said, well, what do you mean, on stage with you? And he said, yeah. And I'd met him 5 minutes before this. 5 minutes before? It was just the most bizarre. So I ended up going on this 25-date ukulele tour.
How long ago was that?
Well, that's about 5 years ago. I played Hammersmith Odeon.
Same stage as Rat.
I played the same stage as Rat, playing an Oasis cover version with 3 Formula One drivers playing percussion with a TV chef. And so the book is basically, it's all about that. It's a tale of rock and roll redemption. And then I've done 2 tours with it. We're doing a whole bunch of festivals. And it's just a genuinely bizarre story. So that story is the basis of my sequel to Hellbent for Leather.
Wonderful. I love that.
Really weird. Yeah, but women of a certain age, they love him. He's got that kind of Cliff Richard, women, they just completely, they love him. They really love him. I've spent the last 5 years enabling him to kind of live out his kind of rock and roll fantasy. Do you know what I mean? Simple as that. he wants a bit of a rock brand. So I'm his guitar teacher and his kind of wingman on stage.
I've noticed Hellbent for Leather's listed on some movie sites as having a film adaptation. Has that been teased at any point?
Yeah, well, no, what happened was that there was a guy called James Wood, who's now a really successful Hollywood writer. He just done adverts. He really liked the book when it came out, but he paid for the film rights. I think you kind of buy a year's worth of film rights. And then he went to Film 4. This was in 2005. Gave him the book and said, I want to do a kind of like, it was kind of a Nick Hornby type thing. It was like a Nick Hornby type thing, but about metal, yeah, but more of a rom-com. Film 4 said, oh, you've never done a film before. We'll give you, I think they gave him 50 grand, 100 grand. They gave him a chunk of money to do like a short film, like a half-hour short film, a standalone short film to see if we, almost like an audition, right? Here's a bunch of money, go and make what you can. And if we like it, we'll give you 10 million quid to make the film. If we don't, we won't. So he made this and wrote the script and everything. And that's what you've seen. And it exists. And I keep meaning to put it on YouTube, but I just haven't got around to it. I've got it on DVD. And it's good. It's really good. But the problem is, and it's not the actor's fault at all, the actor's very good, but the guy who plays me, it's me in Winchester. It's me being a sort of deluded twat in Winchester, starting a band, trash can junkies, all that stuff. But the guy playing me just comes across as a whiny twat. He's not sympathetic. You think, what a twat he deserves. But the guy playing Owen, all the other guys, the guy playing Owen is just wonderful. He's just brilliant. He bounces around. He's got the big hair and, it's really good and it's well scripted and it's funny. And Tim McInerney, guy who plays Thingy in Blackadder, he plays my dad in it.
Oh man!
And it's shot all in Winchester, and it's really kind of, I'm in it. I make a little cameo in it. The real Trash Can Junkies make a cameo as my dad's jazz band. It's a really lovely thing. It was a real kind of lovely thing we did. They didn't buy it, so they never made the feature film.
Shit. And
there was a band. It was soundtracked by a band called the Red Star Rebels.
Oh man, I used to do gigs with them years ago.
Did you? They were in it.
Wow.
They do a live performance in that film. They're playing on some soundstage in, I can't remember where.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And finally, what's your go-to album from when you were fully submerged in hard rock, which you still listen to today?
If I'm going to put something on from that era, it would be, I would say Hello Rocks, but I can't listen to it anymore. I've kind of listened to it so much. I just know it backwards. I would say Early Scorpions. Wow. I think Early Scorpions is massively, massively underrated. Udi John Roth. But even the first three Matthias Jabs albums are really good. But all stuff like In Trance, The Virgin Killer, Taken by Force, I think it's absolutely hugely underrated. I think it's brilliant.
Nice. Good chat. Seb, I've loved chatting with you, mate.
No, thank you for having me. No, it's been nice to chat. Like I say, I haven't talked about all this stuff for such a long time. It's been really, really lovely talking to you.
And I think people will get a real kick out of it. Hopefully some people will check out the book who might not know about it already.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's still in print. I don't know.
It's got to be all over the place on eBay, though, and stuff. So.
Yeah, you'll be able to get it for like 10p on Amazon.
Big shout out and thank you to Seb Hunter for some amazing stories here on the Straight to Video podcast. Please grab a copy of Hellbent for Leather by Seb Hunter or one of his other books, Rock Me Amadeus and How to Be a Better Person. Also, you can find Seb's band Provincials on Facebook at We Are Provincials. As always, your support for this podcast means so much, from everyone that quietly listens, to those of you who share the show and message me, and to those that show support through the Straight to Video Patreon page. Thank you all for having my back. Hope you're enjoying where this podcast is heading. For all earlier episodes, Straight to Video music, videos and merchandise, then please check out stvpod.com, where all of that can be found. Really hope you enjoyed today's show. Thanks again to Seb Hunter for being such a great sport, and I look forward to talking to you all again real soon.